All right, so let's go ahead and do section 8.4. So far we have learned three different methods of factoring. We've learned three different methods of factoring. There's greatest common factor, grouping, and MAF. So MAF, you only use if you have three terms. That's the only time you use MAF, and that's when you have three terms. Grouping is greatest common factor when you have four terms. So grouping you only use for four terms. Greatest common factor you can use anytime. Anytime, anywhere, any place. Anytime, anywhere, any place. So those are the three that we've used so far. Now, the main question that's asked, well, what's the purpose of learning how to factor? The purpose of learning how to factor, learning how to break down a problem, is so that you can do one primary thing: to solve an equation. To solve an equation. So I'm pretty confident, I'm very confident, that if I gave you the equation x plus 3 equals 0, you could solve that without breaking a sweat. If I gave you an equation 2x minus 3 equals 0, you could solve that without breaking a sweat. But if I gave you the equation x squared plus 6x plus 8 equals 0, I'm like, hold up, wait a minute. I don't quite know how I'm going to start that problem. And if you find that you're in that boat, that's okay. You haven't been shown how to do it yet. That's where I come in. So we're going to solve equations like the one that I just erased. But in order to solve an equation like that, we need a particular rule to help us. There's a particular rule that we need in order to solve an equation like that, and that is called the zero product property. So this is the rule that we need, and that's called the zero product property. So we use my highlighter for those of you at home. Remember, those of you at home, if you didn't print out the notes page and you're looking for what do you write, any example or anything you see highlighted should be in your notes. So zero product property basically means you have two things equal to 0. You have two things equal to 0, then either the first part has to be 0, the second part has to be 0, or both of them has to be 0. It's either one, the other, or both. So here's an example of how this would manifest itself. Blow this up a little bit. Here's how this would manifest itself. X plus 3 times 2x minus 1 equals 0. So you have two things in parentheses equal to 0. So since the equation is equal to 0, you can break it apart. Instead of trying to solve it together, break it apart. Take x plus 3 and set it equal to 0. Take 2x minus 1, set it equal to 0. So instead of trying to solve it together, solve them separately. Separately, these are easy to solve. X plus 3 equals 0. What do you do with both sides? How do you get rid of positive 3? Try 3. X equals -3. Two x minus 1 equals 0. First, got to get rid of -1. How do you get rid of -1? You add it. Add 1 to both sides. Then what do you do with the 2? You add it. So x equals 1/2. So, if the equation is equal to 0, and if it's already factored, you can break it apart. If it's equal to 0, and if it's already factored. So, what I would write off of, what I would put to the side as notes for myself, must equal 0. Must be factored. Must equal to 0, there must be factored. So, any questions on the example we just did together? We'll look at some more. So again, those of you who are at home, your burden is a little bit stronger because the people in the classroom, I can see their eyes, they can see my eyes, they can, I can tell point blank. They may not necessarily know what they're doing or struggle with something. Let me help them with that. So those of you who are at home, of course, you have to open your mouth and say something because closed mouths don't get fed. But if we're all good, then let's look at examples 1, 2, and 3. So, examples 1 and 2, we'll do together. Example 3, we'll try yourself. So, example 1, you have 4x parentheses 5x minus 3 equals 0. So, we got to check for those two parts sitting up there. There we go. Must equal to 0. It's equal to 0. Good. Must be factored. This is already factored. It's already factored. So that's good. So that means it is already set up for us to break it apart. It's already set up to break apart. So we take 4x, set it equal to 0, and 5x minus 3, set it equal to 0. You separate. Separate it for the low parts of 3. After you separate it, then you solve it. So 4x equals 0 means 4 times x equals 0. I'm going to divide by 4. So x equals 0. It's perfectly fine to get an answer of 0. Five x minus 3 equals 0. What happens at 3? Add it. 5x equals 3. You divide it. So x equals 3/5. Mr. Look, my answer was fraction. So, add fraction. Be all right. That's it, problem's over. It's already equal to 0. It's already factored. Break it apart and solve the equations. Done. Don't make it harder than what it is. And that whole time is not that hard. Any questions, example 1? 5 of y'all straight? All right, let's do example 2. So x minus 3, x minus 7 equals to 0. Is it equal to 0? It's already factored. And you break it apart. Very probably good to go. So let's get that first equation out the way. So Morgan, how we saw that first equation? So let's pause for a second. Which one of these is the first equation? Okay. So I want to get x by itself. So what do I need to do with that negative 3?
You have to get rid of it.
By doing what?
You have to.
Add 3. Get rid of 3. So x equals 3. That's one of them. Then you're going to do the other one. Add 7 to both sides. So x equals 7. Man, it's not hard, but you're going to do some work. It's not hard, but you're going to do a little work. There's nothing wrong with doing work. There's nothing wrong with doing work. Question on examples 1 and 2 before you do example 3 yourself.
Can you give us a hint? Like maybe what's the start of doing first?
All right. So my hints. Is it equal to 0? That's you. Is it equal to 0?
So you're probably going to say yes, but then no because that 5 is right there.
Let me try this again. Does it equal 0? Go with your first mind.
Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah.
Yes. Yes, it's equal to 0. So that equals 0 sitting right there? You're overthinking. So it's equal to 0. Is it already factored?
Yes.
Yes. Everything's already factored. So what is freaking you out about the problem?
It bothers me that there's a 5 on the left and not on the right as well.
This?
Yeah, that was the part. That made it up.
Did that bother you?
Okay, see, but that's different because it doesn't have a sibling on the other side. You know what I'm trying to say?
So you're worried about the fact that there's 2 parentheses?
Yes. That's why I said it over something. Okay, see, but that's different because that problem doesn't have a call rate.
You just taking what you did to the first problem and doing it to the 5x, and then doing what you did to the second problem to look at the parentheses. You just taking each one out. That's one got combined.
So instead of 2 parts, there's 3 parts. There's just 3 parts. Same concept, 3 parts. So, example number 3. So, example number 3 is no different than 1 and 2. There's just 3 parts. So 5x has to be set equal to 0. 2x plus 3 has to be set equal to 0. And x minus 5 has to be equal to 0. It's just 3 parts. All it is just 3 parts. I switched that all one to nothing. Yeah, it's not hard, it's just 3 parts. So 5x equals 0. Hopefully you divide it by 5. So x equals 0. 2x plus 3 equals 0. Subtract 3. Divide by 2. If you gave it a negative 1.5, that's okay. Last one add 5. That's equals 5. 1, 2, 3 answers. There's your 3. Any questions on example 3? So, wasn't that hard? Why wasn't it that hard? Because it was already equal to 0, and it was already factored. So what do you think is about to happen?
We're gonna factor.
It's either not going to be equal to 0, or it's not going to be factored. So that means we have to do that part ourselves. So we have an extra part to do ourselves. So those of you in here flip the page, those of you in here at home, let's go to the next page. Not that one. All right, so the first page was the easy page. Why? Because it was already set up for you. First page was the easy page. Everything was set up for you. Now it's how do we handle it when it's either not equal to, not factored, or not equal to 0. Not factored, not equal to 0. So here's how we solve it when that situation occurs. First step is rewrite the equation so that it is equal to 0. So if we look at example 1, it's already equal to 0. So there's nothing we need to do there. It's already equal to 0. Step 2, factor. So factor the expression. So remember, right now, we only have 3 ways to do it. GCF, MAF, and grouping. So grouping, you need 4 terms. MAF is 3 terms. GCF, anytime. GCF is anytime. So now that we're in the place where we're solving equations, now I can show you the shorthand way to write the GCF. Up until now, we've been writing this number, same variable, GCF. Now, if you yourself need to keep writing it this way because it helps you understand it, then you keep doing it. I will never tell you to do less work if it's going to help you out. Now, for those people who know that this is what you're supposed to do, this is the short way to write it. So I'm going to keep that up there for a second. Now we're going to factor. We always start with GCF. You have a 4 and you have a 28. What's the biggest number that you can divide out? You have the number 4 and you have the number 28. Number 4 and you have the number 28. Yeah, since you pulled out that chart, you're using the fingers. Some people think it. So, biggest number you can divide out of 4 and 28.
Is it 4?
It's 4. 4 is 1 times 4, 2 times 2. 28 is 1 and 28, 2 and 14, 4 and 7.
Wait, is this the same thing that we did, towards the beginning of the week? Or we
It's the same thing we've been doing the last 2 weeks. This is what we started with. So the biggest number is 4. Do they have the same variable? Do these two parts have the same variable? Ignore the 0. Yes, they do. Sit down next. So your greatest common factor is 4x. Again, if you are struggling, you have to speak up. Morgan, don't sit back there and let me find out that you're struggling. I want to see it on that work too. Again, if you are struggling, ask for help. Because now don't get bad. So the short way to write the greatest common factor is just show that you divided it out. You don't have to write this part. You just show me that you divided it. Shortcut. Divided by 4x. So 4 divided by 4 is 1. X squared divided by x is x. 28 divided by 4 is 7. X divided by x drops out. So now it's factored. So x minus 7, how many terms is that? X minus 7 is how many terms?
2.
2. Can I use MAF with that? No, why not? You have to have 3 terms. That's 2 terms. You cannot use MAF unless you have 3 terms. Unless you have 3 terms, you cannot use MAF. So this is done. So we've done step 2. Any questions before we continue? Again, I'm going through it slow because some people need to see it step by step. Some of you all might have finished already. That's okay, good for you. So, now it's equal to 0. Now it's factored. So now this problem is just like the ones you did on the front page. No different than what you just did on the front page. Take each factor and set it equal to 0. Divide by 4. So x equals 0. Here's one answer. Add 7. X equals 7. Pretty good, right? That's it. Done. Problem's over. If you're looking for the problem to be harder than that, I'm sorry. I don't know what to tell you. Any questions on example 1? Any questions at home with example 1? Good? That's cool. Not good? Then say something. Like I said, you don't gotta worry about anybody laughing at you because you asked the question. The only person that's good enough to laugh at you is me. I'm not gonna do it. And if they laugh at you, someone else laughs at you, I got something for them, because they don't want these problems. All right, so let's do another example. X squared plus 11x plus 30 equals 0. Follow the same steps. Rewrite the equation so it is equal to 0. Is this equal to 0? Check. Factor the expression. So what do we always start with? 3 letters. GCF. So you have a 1, an 11, and a 30. What's the biggest number that can come out? 1. She remembers what I said. If any of these numbers is 1, then the greatest common factor is 1. No, you don't even have to worry about wasting your time. If any of the 3 numbers are 1, the greatest common factor is 1. Do we all have the same variable? No. So your GCF is 1. You can keep going. GCF is 1, we keep going. So now we go to MAF. Can we do MAF now? Yes. 1, 2, 3 terms. 3. You do not include the 0. You ignore the 0 when you're counting your terms. 1, 2, 3. You okay, Shikar? You sure? Okay. Okay. So, M is your last number, so that's 30. A is your middle, and that's 11. So we need 2 numbers that multiply to 30 and add to 11. Multiply to 30, add to 11. Multiply to 30. So we got 1 times 30, 2 times 15, 3 times 10, 5 times 6. 5 times 6 is 30. 5 plus 6. 96. So MAF means we keep parentheses. X plus 5, X plus 6 equals 0. So now we're done factoring. Now we just solve it. It's factored, so we split it apart. Subtract 5. X equals negative 5. Subtract 6. X equals negative 6. Yes, go ahead, Mark. Tell me what part you're confused on. Let's see. Hold on a second. I'm going to type this in real quick. Tell me what part you are confused on. So we have a question about MAF. So let's look at MAF one more time. So once you identify that the greatest common factor is 1, or it's not going to come out, So the M is the last number. The A is the middle number. To get the F, you figure out what two numbers will multiply to 30 and add to the 11. So that's when you have to figure out what multiplies. So that's 1 times 30, 2 times 15, 3 times 10, 5 times 6. And we start adding to see what we get, what gets to 11. 1 plus 30 is 31, so that's not going to work. 2 plus 15 is 17, that's not going to work. 3 plus 10 is 13, that's not going to work. 5 plus 6 is 11. So 5 and 6 is our combination. So to get to x plus 5 and x plus 6, let me erase this part. So to get to the parentheses, you first open your parentheses. So x squared means you need to have an x in each parenthesis. The 5 and the 6 come from the two numbers that you got when you did MEF. So those two numbers are what goes into these parentheses. That's where the parentheses come from. So, Kamara, hopefully that answers your question. Anyone else with questions before we do example 3 and example 4? You know, see, it's different. Some of y'all are already looking at it thinking, where we gonna solve this? So, what's wrong with example 3? What is it not equal to? 0. Not equal to 0. So that means you have to force it to equal 0. So we have to force the problem to equal to 0. But here's how we force the problem to equal to 0. That's a 40. How do you get rid of 40? So, oh, all right. So if I divide it, what's 40 divided by 40? That's okay, you gave a guess.
Wait.
I'm not mad at people for giving guesses. So if you divide it, that gives you 1. So we're not going to divide it. Here it is. 40 minus 40 is 0. But if you do it on the right side, you got to do it on the left side too. That's y squared minus 6y minus 40. So if equation not equal to 0, take the opposite. Isn't that what you did? The opposite of 40 is negative 40. Take the opposite and move it. Take the opposite and move it. You don't need my permission to do that. If it's not equal to 0, do it. If it's not equal to 0, do it. So now the equation is equal to 0. Any questions before we continue? Now the equation is equal to 0. You need that in order to break it apart. You need that to break it apart. So now we factor. Well, it's not a little bit. All right. So factoring it, we always start with the greatest common factor. What's the biggest number? 1. Biggest number is 1. Does everything have the same variable? No. So, greatest common factor is 1. How many terms do we have? 3. That means we can do MAF. So this is now MAF problem. So, done the greatest common factor. You have MAF. You do whatever. Come on, Mr. Hey, Mr. So, M is the last term, negative 40. A is the middle term, negative 6. So we need two numbers that multiply to negative 40 and add to negative 6. So we need two numbers that multiply to 40, negative 40, and add to negative 6. So we have a guess of negative 5 and 8. So negative 5 times 8 will give you negative 40. But negative 5 plus 8 is 3. So close. We just need another pair of numbers. So think about all the ways you can get to 40.
What times 10?
So,
Negative 4 times 10.
so negative 4 times 10 will give me negative 40. Negative 4 plus 10 is positive 6. So we need a negative 6. That's okay.
Times 8.
No. She's got the right numbers. We just need to move the sign. So anytime you find out that you got the right number, the sign was off, just put the sign on the other number. So make that positive, make that negative. So positive 4, 10. Yeah, but some of you, MAF is really going to reinforce and teach you how to multiply and teach you how to add because you're now directly using it. So make your 2 parentheses. Y squared is Y and Y. Take your 2 numbers, put it in. So now it's factored. Now our problem's factored. So far we've done steps 1 and 2. 1 is to get the equation equal to 0, which was all this. So what I highlighted in yellow is getting the equation equal to 0. What I highlighted in green is factoring. Any questions before we do steps 3 and 4? Before we finish off this problem. The problem is just about done. Now comes the easy part. This is the easy part. And now you can split that problem up. Now you can split the problem up. Don't leave the highlighter on. Y plus 4 equals 0. Y minus 10 equals 0. Once it's factored, you can split it apart. Subtract 4. Y equals negative 4. And add 2. Y equals 10. That's step 1. All of this is step 2. That's step 3. And all of that's step 4. Yeah, not hard. Probably the hardest part was figuring out what two numbers to use.
How many points is that on the test? That's 4 points.
So the ones above it, which are already equal to 0, would have been 6. That one would have been 8. And these two down here would have been 10. The more points it is, there's probably more steps involved to it with it.
We don't have homework on this section.
No, you'll have homework. It'll be uploaded to Google Classroom.
Wait, the test work,